Good evening, folks in Canby, and welcome to tonight's Planning Commission meeting, Monday, February 14th. We'll go ahead and get started with our agenda, and the first thing on the agenda is the pledge. So if you have a flag, go ahead and we'll get started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh my gosh, what are you doing? Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead and get the agenda started. So first, I believe the other planning commissioners are aware of this, but after the last meeting, Commissioner Mills decided to resign from the Planning Commission. So I just wanted to take this opportunity, whether he is watching or not, to thank him for his time and service to the community as a member of the Planning Commission. He had a history of planning related activities from his time in Corvallis, I believe, or Eugene. And so he provided a very direct and served as a very direct and valuable asset to this committee. And so it is unfortunate that he has decided to step down, but we did want to thank him. I did want to thank him for his time and the service that he gave to his community. So thank you very much. With that being said, we do have an open position on the Planning Commission now. We are accepting applications. So folks in Canby, please get the word out that we are accepting applications for the open position. I am working with the mayor and city staff to get that more published. And here in the near future, we hope to go through the application process, the interview process, and fill that open position. So that is that. Is there any questions? No? Okay. And let me do this so it's not so awkward. Pardon me. Okay, get on up there. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to the second agenda item, which is the consent items. We have no consent items on the agenda tonight. So we will move on to section 3, which is citizen input on non-agenda items. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on non-agenda items. Each person will be given 3 minutes to speak. Staff and the Planning Commission will make every effort to respond to questions raised during citizens' input before the meeting ends or as quickly as possible thereafter. So first, we'll see if anybody had any questions that they sent in advance that is related to non-agenda items. Do we have anything?
Not that I'm aware of, Chair Patton.
Okay, and do we have anybody on the call that has anything they would like to say regarding non-agenda items tonight that didn't chime in early? Okay, then with that, we will go ahead and move on into item number 4, which is new business and discussion regarding possibly starting our meetings earlier. And this is something that we kind of, an idea that we kind of brushed upon at our last Planning Commission meeting. And so I'm just curious what people's thoughts are. We're talking about maybe starting the meetings, the option of starting the meetings at 6. By starting them a little earlier, we would be able to end them earlier is the goal. So that way the meetings aren't running so late into the night. So I will open up the floor for questions, debate, discussion on what the Planning Commission's thoughts are on changing our meeting time.
And Chair Patton, just one piece of information. We would be starting that on March 14th. That would be the date that started. It would not be the next hearing on February 28th, but March 14th to give the 20-day notice so that those items that are on tonight that would, the one item that will be continued to a date certain will remain at 7 p.m. on the 28th.
Okay. So it would be the first time that happens, would be first new time. Okay, so with that, is there any? Okay, so we got Commissioner Jarosh. Go ahead.
I'm fine with the change. I think it's great. And I'm very flexible. So whatever the group decides, I'm okay with. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Ewert.
I'm good with that. 6 o'clock is fine with me. It's actually better, as long as it's not with the intent to have a 8-hour meeting instead of a 4-hour meeting.
No, I think if it was to be an 8-hour meeting, I think my computer would just combust. So we would not be doing, doing that. No, unacceptable. To heck with public meeting laws. We will end the meeting. No, not even happening. So anyways, so I got a yes for Commissioner Ewert. Commissioner Hutchinson?
In what way would we be limiting the meeting length? I mean, we're kind of open-ended. It's like a baseball game at this point. We're done when we're done for the most part. I mean, I don't think that we ever have plans to ever cut off debate before reaching a conclusion one way or another on an issue. So
No.
It tightens up my evening quite a bit, but I'm all for having things finish early, but it seems like early is kind of open.
I think it's sort of a relative term in that, we know that we can really only have 2, at the maximum 3 sort of things on the agenda. What one of the concerns was, if we start the meeting at 6 now, all of a sudden we're going to have 4 things on the agenda and still go till 10, 11 o'clock at night or whatever. No, the plan is to still only have like a couple of things on the agenda. And by starting at 6 instead of starting like normally, it kind of runs its course. And so by starting a little earlier, we would hypothetically end a little earlier. We wouldn't necessarily end discussion. I'm hoping that it wouldn't go on for that long, but it wouldn't be like trying to hammer in 4 different things because now we have an extra hour, that sort of thing, if that makes sense.
I'd support it then.
Okay. Commissioner Calkins?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to just add on to what Commissioner Ewert and Jarosh had said. I agree with Commissioner Hutchinson, though, as far as, I agree with the earlier, the better for me. I'm flexible. I think 6 o'clock would be great, as long as we're not adding on more to our already packed schedules. So I agree with the time change if we move forward with that.
Okay. Commissioner Ewert, you have your hand back up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just also think it might be a fairly good policy that staff should know that we're going to limit these meetings to, 3 hours, whatever our framework is, and let the applicants know that, you're on the docket for a 3-hour meeting. You're number 2. It just might be that you get moved on to the next meeting. And I think that staff should let people know that. It's I don't know. I don't see any problem with that. People need to know going into that we're going to be a 3-hour meeting, and anything that looks like it's going to be outside of that probably might get carried over to the next time. Unless we're bumping up into the 120-day rule and we've got an issue there. But after about 90 minutes, we're becoming ineffective. So we really need to kind of pull that together, as far as I'm concerned. And I think the applicants need to be made aware of that.
Yes, and I think what a lot of times it's ruled by the number of people who are chiming in and stuff. So obviously, we can look at empirical data of what these meetings usually run, and we know that if we have 2 or 3 beefy items and 1 not so beefy item, if that makes sense, that it's about 4 hours at the max. And then we can kind of talk about how we fill in from there. In fact, that is a question that I had written down based on what happened with our agenda tonight. And this is a question for Don. When it comes to setting these agendas, I know we have to make public notice of what we will be talking about in advance for public meeting laws. Is there a way to put flex items on these agendas? So like in the case, and for instance, tonight, we have an applicant that is moving back to a date certain. So we initially had 2 applicants on this agenda. Now that applicant is not going to be speaking. So essentially we will only have 1. Is there a way for like, and I'm going to use just say the fence codes, for example. If the fence codes are sort of figured out and we're ready to do sort of our initial pass on that sort of thing, is there a way to say, this is the agenda and the agenda has a flex item on it to say that we may or may not talk about this item on the agenda, so that we don't, because obviously the time that we get together is valuable, and I would hate to squander it by saying, everybody's canceled, so our meeting's done tonight. Is there a way of doing that?
Chair Patton, I would say that those would be more likely work session kind of items that we could maybe put on the back end of the agenda.
Okay.
And I think that's a really good idea. There are a number of items coming forward that will be coming forward to the Planning Commission. I was going to talk about that during the Planning Director's summary of things coming up at the end of the hearing tonight. But I think that's a good idea. There's a lot of information that's going to be coming forward, just kind of preemptive, so that when you guys do, as commissioners do see these code updates that will be coming forth before you, I think it'll take less time. So I think that we could put that on there as items that would be work session items in the back. I think it's going to be a little tricky. There's a lot of expectations when we get to applicants and we put something on an agenda. I think that's a little different when it's an actual decision that's being made on a land use application. And I would like to stray from that.
Oh, yeah.
If at the back end, if somebody, if we have more time, I'm all for that for discussion.
Yeah, I would not. I want to just make it very clear. This would not be for, hearings. This would be code talk or work session items that, let's say, next meeting you have on the docket that will be part of the work session, but we have, time open tonight and say, okay, well, sort of that stuff in the back pocket. No, I would never expect to try and do a hearing like that, because I would not want all those people to be sitting on this call waiting for something to happen and then be like, oh, guess what? We didn't get to you tonight. That would be unacceptable. So I think it would make sense with as much as we've got going on, if we can sort of make that work out start doing that on the agenda. I think that would be smart. Does everybody kind of agree? I see heads nodding. I'm assuming that Commissioner Hutchinson, your head is nodding too in the darkness.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So really quick, I just want to double check. Is Commissioner Heeb on with us tonight?
Chair Patton, he and I spoke earlier today on another unrelated topic to tonight's hearing, and he said he was not available to attend tonight.
Okay, I just wanted to double check. I didn't see him on here, but I didn't want to skip over him. And I too, it will be a little interesting moving to 6, especially when I'm traveling for work, because I can still kind of zoom in onto the calls and stuff there. At 7, I can usually squeeze in dinner, but I can make it work as well. I'm a fan of starting these earlier to allow folks time so that we don't go until midnight, or 11 o'clock. So with that, I think we have consensus to go ahead and move forward with holding our March 14th meeting at 7 o'clock. And
Is that 6? 6
or 6, sorry. Yes, sorry. 6 o'clock. Start our March 14th meeting at 6 o'clock. And then we will go ahead and hold them at 6 o'clock moving forward until there needs to be a change. Do we need to vote on that, or are we good?
I would make a motion or have someone make a motion on that.
Okay. So I guess I'll entertain a motion that we, starting with our March 14th meeting, we begin to hold them at 6 o'clock rather than 7. It looks like it's been moved by Commissioner Ewert, seconded by
I second, Judy.
Commissioner Jarosh. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, any opposition? None noted. The motion carries. There we go. So with that, there's no other, we have no other new business to talk about. So we will go ahead and move into our public hearing tonight on,
And Chair Patton,
Yep.
I was just gonna say for a moment, since we have a continuance, I was gonna have Eric Forcell speak to that as to a date certain without opening Mark's Place subdivision up. So I was gonna have him speak to that, if that's okay with you.
oh, is that the first one on the agenda? I thought it was the other one.
Well, because it's continuance to a date certain, which is gonna be February 28th at 7 PM.
We just do that one first?
Yes, we would prefer not to open that item, but rather just agree to continue that to a date certain, February 28th, 7 PM.
Okay, and we don't need a motion or anything on that, correct?
Eric,
This is Eric. You would need to make a motion on that as well.
Okay, is there specific verbiage or just make it up?
If you can see my screen, I have a sample motion here. Also,
Can we?
It's
yeah.
kind of, if you zoom out, it's kind of cut off here.
Right. I can't see your full screen either.
Yeah.
try that. Give me a second.
Ah, there we go.
Perfect. Thank you.
So this is the verbiage we're using.
That's correct.
I start with the applicant and read down. Oh no, right here. I see it. I got it.
Yes, it's some brief information summarizing the continuance. They're really the intent and kind of what Don was trying to get at is we'd like to not discuss any merits of this particular item so that we don't have an open record that we need to track and rather just limit it to the continuance itself.
Yep, I see it right down here, sample motion. Okay.
Yep.
So I'd like to entertain a motion to continue this public hearing to consider Max Place sub 21-03 over the next or to the next regular scheduled planning commission hearing on Monday, February 28th, 2022.
So moved.
Right. So moved by Commissioner Hutchinson, seconded by
Commissioner Jarosh.
Commissioner Jarosh. All those in favor signify by, or is there any discussion? Commissioner Ewert, do you have a discussion? You're muted.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. How long ago did we find out that this is going to be continued?
Right.
We didn't learn.
Yeah, I didn't hear that.
I can answer that. We learned about some significant issues that needed to be corrected, specifically related to the sewer infrastructure on late Friday. So there was little time to give you advance notice on this. It was a bit of a surprise to staff. I think a bit of surprise to the applicant. And rather than go through kind of a tortuous process that doesn't really have a good end result for anybody, the applicant requested in writing to continue over the hearing to February 28th. I also added that letter to the agenda packet as well. So we did not learn about this until late Friday.
All right. Well, I would just say as a courtesy to the commissioners, we spend hours and hours reading this stuff that you guys put out and that these people put out. It would be it would be great. And now we will have read information that's really not probably applicable at some level. So just as a courtesy to the commissioners, as soon as you find out about it, I think a quick email or text message or something would have been good. In my opinion, I don't know if anybody else is in the same boat, but I think that would have been a good thing.
I'd be happy
Okay.
to do that next time around. The other thing is we didn't actually receive so there were some initial communications to us late Friday, and we didn't receive the request, I believe, until early this morning in writing. So we didn't have a ton of turnaround time either to get this out there. And I understand the concern about reading a pretty lengthy packet. Unfortunately, it was unforeseen to planning staff as well. I was a bit surprised by it.
Okay.
But duly noted, Commissioner Ewert, on trying to provide some advance notice in the future if we're aware of a continuance.
Okay. Commissioner Jarosh?
It's the same thing. I appreciate that you got very little notice. I think it would be great if we had all been notified at the same time that the Chair Padden was notified, partly just, planning our evenings. But thank you for thinking about that in the future.
And I might add, so when these sort of things happen, obviously, we've read the packet. When the new information is added to the packet, is there a way to specifically call out that new information to the commissioners to say, this is what came in recently, these are the areas that this applies to? So rather than having to reread the whole packet, we can hone in on those areas that the change was made. Is that allowed? Is that a possibility?
So yes, Chair Patton, that's exactly what I plan to do. So the main issues of concern, without diving too far into the merits, are related to sewer infrastructure. And 99% of what you as commissioners have read is likely to unchange. At least that's my initial opinion from what I know thus far. While it was maybe painful to have read that and then not have the hearing tonight, I don't think the work was lost, so to speak. And I'll be updating with either a memorandum or some other communication for the next public hearing, along with whatever submitted materials we receive from the applicant.
Okay.
So if you've read the packet, you're probably in pretty good shape for next time around.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was figuring more for not just specifically this particular one, but I know for some of the other ones we've had the one moved back 4 times or 3 or 4 times. And so if it's possible to just call those things out, that would be fantastic. Commissioner
Sure.
DeRoche?
And again, just not to belabor, but when you start the meeting with something that's a surprise to all of us, and I know that's not your fault, but that's probably something we should avoid.
Yes. I did not let everybody know because I did not want to get in trouble. So I did get the information at some point in time this morning about it being moved back, but I did not let everybody know because I did not want to send out a all call and then get in trouble. So I think we know we got to work on that. I believe Eric and Don are well aware, and we'll go from there. So with that, is there any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and proceed to a vote. All those in favor of moving this one back to date certain signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? None noted. The motion carries unanimously. So with that, I think we now move on to Canby High School improvements, DR 21-13, CUP 21-0, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So now I have this is where I read the script, correct?
Yes.
I think I'm getting there. So, the matter presently before the hearing body requires a public hearing. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. If you wish to testify on this matter, please fill out a public testimony card or contact city staff or planning commission staff in advance of the meeting and give it to the recording secretary. At the appropriate time, when your name is called, please step forward to the microphone or turn on your video, and you'll be let into the meeting when we're doing it online to state your name, address, and interest in the particular matter. For longer presentations, proponents and opponents may buy time from one another. In so doing, those either in favor or those opposed may allocate their time to a spokesperson who will represent the entire group. You may be limited by time for your presentation. Generally, the applicant will have a total of 15 minutes to speak. The proponents will be given 5 minutes each. The opponents will be given 5 minutes each, and those thought to be neutral on the matter will be given 5 minutes each. The applicant will then be given 10 minutes for rebuttal. All questions must be directed through the chair. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access and to become a part of the permanent record. All written testimony received both for and against prior to the hearing shall be summarized by staff and presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards the applicable review criteria contained as indicated in the staff report, the comprehensive plan, or the applicable land use regulations which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government to respond to the issue may preclude any action for damages in circuit court. Everyone present is encouraged to testify, even if it is only to concur with previous testimony. First, we will deal with a conflict of interest. At this time, I would ask that any member of the hearing body who has a conflict of interest to please indicate the nature and extent of the conflict and whether you intend to participate in or abstain from hearing the present matter. Does anybody plan to abstain from this hearing? Does anybody have a conflict of interest? No. Excellent. Ex parte contact. Also, if any member of the hearing body has had any ex parte contact with anyone prior to the hearing, including a visit to the site, please declare the nature and extent of such contact at this time. Any ex parte contact? Has anybody been to any games lately?
I visited the site, drew no conclusions.
Okay, very good. Does any member of the audience have any questions for any commissioner regarding conflicts of interest or ex parte contact?
Commissioner Padden?
Correct? Yes?
I have a senior at the high school right now. I have two that graduated. I have one that's going to be a freshman next year. But I plan to participate. I just wanted to throw it out.
I think you're kind of bragging, but that's all right.
I'm very proud of my kids, so yes, but
there you go. So I hear nobody has some problems in the audience. So now we'll just run down through the public hearing format. We're going to hear the staff report. There will be questions, if any, from the hearing body and or staff. We will open the public hearing. We will have the applicant speak for 15 minutes. We will have opponents speak for 5, or proponents speak for 5, opponents speak for 5, those that are neutral speak for 5, and then there will be a rebuttal period for 10 minutes. We'll close the public testimony. We will take questions by the hearing body. There will be discussion and deliberation by the hearing body with no additional testimony unless specifically allowed by me. We'll see how that works. There will be a decision made. And does anybody have questions regarding any of that? Sweet. I promise to you that I will practice that script so we can like read it like the disclaimer at the end of a car commercial. So with that, we will go ahead and turn it over for the staff reports.
Great. Thank you, Chair Patton. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for being here. My name is Brianna. I'm an associate planner with the city, and I will be reviewing the staff report tonight. So here's our subject property. It's Canby High School. It's addressed off of 4th Avenue. It's just under 41 acres. It is zoned R1, and it is designated as a public land use in our comprehensive plan. The proposal we'll be discussing tonight is a new 32,000 square foot 2-story wing to the existing main building. This wing will include science classrooms, general classrooms, and shared and support spaces. There's also a new storage shed proposed next to the tennis courts. They will be demolishing some of the existing outbuildings, and they would be doing warm, safe, and dry renovations throughout the existing building. And those are mostly going to be internal. So again, here's just a zoom in on the high school where the work is going to occur. Towards the north here is where the new wing will be. And at the bottom next to the tennis courts is where the new storage shed will be. Again, here it is just in a plan layout. And then on the right, we have the elevations for the new storage building. It's a storage building. But what it will do is consolidate a lot of sort of smaller outbuildings that they have right now into one space. So that's good. Here's a rendering of the new wing. They are using materials that call back to the existing architecture. And they have, they have a whole design team who will also talk about it. But, I think it will mesh well with the existing structure. So here are the applicable criteria for the design review and the conditional use. The conditional use is actually because it's an educational facility in the R1 zone. So we're not actually changing anything about the use, but we do have to sort of carry that CU through this application as well. So here are the applicable criteria. Parking, we're going to be discussing parking, and outdoor lighting are the two areas that I'm going to specifically touch on because overall they do meet the majority of the standards in our code here. So here are the dimensional standards for the R1 zone. In summation, they do meet them. There is no increase in lot coverage or what we call impervious surface because they are building on existing impervious surface. So even though they're adding square footage, they're not adding impervious surface. So that's something we look out for, but they are meeting all the dimensional standards. And now we're going to talk about parking. So we have a standard in our code for a high school specifically that is 1 space per classroom plus 1 space per 6 students. Right now, as it stands, they are parked at 255 spaces. That is considered underparked based on our standard. And they provided us with a few numbers because at what the capacity for the students in the building could be, they would have been required to provide more than 350 spaces. And at the current enrollment, they should be providing 312 spaces. With this new addition, I said that they were building on top of impervious surface. Well, they're building on some parking. They are requesting that they reduced their existing parking by 30 spaces, and they are proposing 225 total spaces. They provided several reasons for this, and I am going to let the applicant really dive into those details. But one thing that I did find compelling was this this figure here that, you know, the enrollment rate is actually going to be steady, and it might actually lower a bit. And again, the fact that they provided us with two numbers show that there has to be some flexibility built into these parking counts. You know, I understand it's kind of scary to say, you know, they could possibly need 358 spaces, but it's not going to, you know, realistically going to be occurring. And we do have these sort of these enrollment counts, you know, to support the reduction. Again, going from 358 to 225, it's a big jump, and I understand that, but they do have their reasoning, and they'll be discussing that further. The other point that I wanted to point out that doesn't precisely meet our code is the outdoor lighting. On the very east side of the property, they have to provide additional light because it is a drive aisle. And there will be a small amount of light trespass onto the residential properties to the east. It's going to be at about a 0.2 foot candle. And if you're translating that, it's about, you could say half a watt. But I know that light is not kind of a discrete entity. So, you know, you kind of have to figure that into, it'll be trespassing just over the property line. And that's kind of what the illumination will be at that point. But of course, it does increase as you go towards the fixtures. I will point out that lighting for drive aisles is required for safety, and they are placed as far west as possible. It's a very constricted area. In terms of agency and public comments, we did not receive anything too out of the ordinary from agencies. It's an existing site with existing utilities. So it's just to make sure that coordination is happening throughout the process. We received no public comments at the time today, as of today. But I do know that a few people did ask for the Zoom link, so they might be here to discuss this, and that's great, but no written comments were received. The conditions of approval are, again, nothing too out of the ordinary, permitting and coordination with other agencies. They are proposing, they had a pretty nice landscape plan in their packet, so we'll make sure they follow through with that landscaping. ADA compliance, which of course they're covering already, pre-construction and inspections. And so with that, overall, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approve applications DR 21-13 and CUP 21-01, subject to the conditions of approval provided in the staff report. And I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, so with that, we will move into questions from members of the commission. Are there any questions? Commissioner Jarosh.
I have a quick one. Thank you, Brianna, for that. Very helpful. Is there, what's the timing of the lighting? Is it 24/7 or?
I don't know. We'll have to ask the applicant. That's a good question.
Okay.
Some outdoor lighting is on all the time. And because it's for safety, I have a feeling that there has to be some sort of at least ambient lighting out there all the time, but we'll see what the applicant says.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to Commissioner Ewert.
Okay, good report, Brianna. Nice job. I got a question on page 3 of your staff report. I'm looking at the detail of proposed site plan from applicant. It looks to me like they're building a little bit of the building on somebody else's property. Is that the drawing of the new classroom wing? Looks like it extends over the property line. Is that?
No,
right?
that's not intended at all. I'm not sure, you know, it might have been a mapping error. They might be outlining the area a little too wide, but that's not the intention at all.
Okay. I was just curious. I thought maybe there was some special special thing there. So,
Gotcha.
Okay,
No, I
that's
would
all
have pointed that out for sure.
okay, that's all I got for right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about there. It looks like something like new fire lane. It looks like it looks almost like maybe they put in what it used to be and sort of displaying how much space that displaces. But I think they can probably, a representative from the applicant will be able to speak on that. Anything else from the commission? No? Huh. Fantastic. We're going to move on to open the public hearing for testimony. And we will invite the applicants in to speak. Who will be speaking on behalf of this?
Thank you,
Anybody?
Chair Patton. Yeah, thank you, Chair Patton. Just a little slow to unmute there. My name is Shana Reberg, and I'm with Angelo Planning Group, part of the applicant and project team. So myself, Larry Burrich from the school district, and Kina Vols from Malum Architects are the three
Recording
scheduled,
in progress.
are the three
Okay.
scheduled speakers, and then we have rest of the team here to help answer questions if needed afterwards.
Okay, excellent. So I'll as soon as I get done speaking and you start, I will. Yes, I know. I understand.
Yeah, I got that too.
So if you did get the pop-up box, just say yes, you understand that it's being recorded. It's not that big of a deal. So you will have 15 minutes for your presentation. We'll start by you giving your name, address, and that information. And just as a reminder, anybody else who chimes in needs to give their name and address. So go ahead.
Testimony or us?
So this is now for the public hearing. So this is your 15 minutes
Okay.
to explain the project to us. And if you can speak to some of the questions that the commission had, you can go ahead and do that as well. Okay.
Right. And is my screen showing? Is the presentation showing?
It is not at this point in time.
Try that again.
Someone may
Gotcha.
need to approve the sharing.
Yeah, I just made you co-host, Shana. That should probably work.
Okay. Did that work? It's
Not yet.
Sure.
There you go.
wow.
Something is happening.
Is the magic happening?
The
Yep.
magic has happened. Yes. So with that, you can go ahead and get started.
Okay, and I'd like to invite Larry Burrich from Canby School District to start, and then myself and Kina will follow.
Hey, thank you. Good evening and happy Valentine's Day. On behalf of the entire Canby School District and staff, I want to say thank you. We are so grateful to the entire city of Canby and everyone in the community who, through their support and partnerships, really, with the district, helped us pass this bond. A bond which has given us an opportunity to make some needed improvements and upgrades in several schools during our first phase this past summer, and lets us continue to focus on some exciting upcoming projects slated to begin in the summer of 2022, including the Canby High School improvements and addition of an entire new wing, which brings us here today. Our bond goal was designed around the theme warm, safe, and dry, which focused on mechanical and roofing upgrades, creating safe and welcoming vestibules, lighting improvements, building a brand new multi-use turf field, transforming both of the high school softball and baseball infields to turf, and my personal favorite, the addition of all new playground equipment at all of our schools, which not just the Canby students, but the entire community can enjoy. So thanks again for your time and support in reviewing our plans, and we are so proud to be an integral part of the Canby community.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Larry. And I need to advance. So again, my name is Shana Reberg. I'm with Angelo Planning Group, MIG, address 921 Southwest Washington Street, Suite 468. And that's Portland, Oregon, 97205. Yeah, and I just want to kind of kick it off. We've actually touched on a lot of this, so I won't spend too much time here. And again, thank you so much, Larry, because this is a very important kind of project to that 2020 Canby School District bond. And it includes an addition of, as we've heard, about 32,000 square feet in a 2-story section in the southeast portion of the main building, which is kind of up in the northeast portion of the site. So that addition will entail removing about 10,000 square feet of outbuildings, but whose uses will be relocated to other buildings on campus. So we will not lose those uses. The addition will provide a range of important spaces, including those that have been mentioned, but 6 science classrooms and labs, 6 general education classrooms, shared learning spaces, and support spaces. And I'll note that this addition and the site work surrounding it are the subject of our application. But there will also be modernization of areas within the existing building adjacent to the new addition, as well as other upgrades of the high school, which include internal renovations of the existing 200 wing, mechanical upgrades and roofing upgrades, and access control and technology upgrades throughout the campus, as well as addition of several single occupant ADA restrooms. So while those are not subject to kind of development review and thus are not addressed in our application, they are very important parts of the project all the same. So we wanted to emphasize that while these improvements do increase the building size from roughly 302,000 square feet to about 324,000 square feet, they will not change the current student capacity, which is 2,150 students, but which we've already discussed is not really where we're at yet. The current and projected student enrollment is basically flat. So up to about 2030, we're looking at an average of about 1,330 students. So this has been covered to some extent, for grounding again in the existing site. Of course, Canby High School has been a very long-standing use in the site, as I'm sure all of you know. The campus size, as Brianna mentioned, is about 40 acres or a little over 40 acres. However, our development area of the site, which again is kind of up here on this northeast corner, is roughly 56,000 square feet. So, just a little over an acre. So a very discrete part of the site. And as already mentioned, the zoning is low density residential R1. And it is a conditionally permitted use on the site, but it is the same zoning as the land directly to the east, the neighbors there, which is also R1 zoning. That's the site. And with that, I want to turn it over to Kina with Malum Architects so she can talk a little bit more about the proposal details. And Kina, let us know if you feel comfortable addressing the lighting question, as well as maybe that kind of mapping area of where our proposed site and kind of development actually extends to with some of these drawings that you're going to speak to.
Sounds great. Thank you, Shayna. And good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here on behalf of Malum Architects. So you see here in the kind of blue color that's the approximate footprint of the new addition that we're proposing. You'll see on the eastern edge where we have an arrow that's pointing to the area of proposed work. So that's kind of outlining this approximately, 56,000 square feet that Shayna was saying of overall disturbance area or site area for not only the footprint of the new building, but then the site improvements that we'll be undergoing as well. And you can see in the orangish color is our fire and service access route. So that's going to be required by Canby Fire and Camas Fire. And then as far as the lighting goes, that is something that we're proposing to be on motion sensors so that, it would be coupled with a photo cell and the idea being that not every light has to be powered all the time to help with some of that just overall illuminance during the nighttime. So it's able to be, toned down or diminished. And then I think one of the main considerations as we were laying out this new proposed addition was to really try to get the new to sort of fit in like almost like hand in glove with the existing main building. And you can see here from the site plan that we're very constrained, not only on the southern edge, because you can see the northern portion of the existing track, athletics field area sort of peeking its head out, but also on the eastern edge, obviously we're confined because of the eastern property line, and we're trying to fit a lot into this area. So those were kind of our site constraints. And then for the next slide, we're just showing what we've developed as part of the outdoor southern plaza that would be built and constructed in between the proposed new wing and then that northern part of the track. And this outdoor area is helping to act as a buffer between the athletics, between the new building. You can see it skirting over to the east side, so we're providing buffering there as well. And as far as the west goes, you can see this existing alleyway. Maybe someone can just see if I can annotate here. Here, hopefully everyone can see that, which is our east-west connection and thoroughfare from the new area of work that we're proposing, both the exterior and new wing. And it's the connection back to the athletics and track field with the western buildings and areas of campus, as well as the western parking areas. And as was mentioned, we took a lot of cues from the existing buildings throughout the campus. And so right across that little alleyway that I was talking about, that is our sort of east-west existing connector back to the western areas of campus, we have the existing athletics building and ATC buildings. And those buildings will, in our longer term planning discussions with Canby School District, those buildings are newer and they will remain. So we kind of drew from those as far as developing our materials palette for the new wing. So you'll see that we're going to have a main sort of what we're calling a field brick, which you see here. And then there'll be an accent brick around the windows where it's slightly recessed. We're creating, we have outdoor learning areas that are on the southern side of the proposed addition. And so for those zones where there's going to be a lot more student use and a lot more use in general, we're proposing cladding just in those areas that's very robust and durable and is easy to clean. And you'll see also up here in the upper right, we have a little bit of parapet cladding. And I think in the next slide.
Kina, you're at 10 minutes right now.
Okay. Do I have 5 minutes? Okay. Great.
We've gotten double messaging.
She talks too much. Okay. So this would be a view if I was coming from the west, approach and walking east to go to the track and the new Southern Plaza. This is my view, and you can see it's drawing me into this main entry area here for the new wing. And the next slide, please. And then this is if I were coming from that fire lane that's on the eastern side and wanting to walk in between the track area and the new addition. And here are some of these outdoor gathering spaces and covered outdoor learning areas that I had mentioned.
We jumped right from design. Thank you so much, Kina.
Yes.
So I'm just going to touch on a couple of development code related matters before wrapping up. So parking, as Brianna was touching on, we are proposing a total number of 225 spaces, and we are finding that to be in a sufficient amount, largely because of that flat student enrollment that is projected. It's also, though, that students take a number of modes to get to school as it is. They are busing, walking, rolling, biking, and driving. And for busing, up to 50% of students arrive by bus. There's also staff that not just drive alone, but carpool. Open spaces have been observed during school hours. And school leaders have not received complaints about parking during school hours. We are aware that sometimes during events at night, that can arise as an issue, but nothing that has been received as a comment or complaint during the day, during school hours. And then regarding any other kind of transportation issues, as we've noted, with no increase in student capacity or enrollment, there is no change or increase in trips that are projected. And along those lines, no traffic impacts were identified by city staff or the city's traffic engineer. Thus, no traffic impact study or traffic analysis letter was deemed as needed, given no increase in demand on surrounding roads being expected. So in conclusion, the applicant wants to express our support for the staff report findings and proposed conditions of approval. And we are here to request approval for the type 3 conditional use and site and design review application. With that, we have several members of the applicant and project team here to answer questions when the time is appropriate.
Okay, is that the conclusion? Look at that, you have 2 minutes to spare. I forgot to mention, be sure to make sure my little pane is in your like panel, because I was going to I tried to hold up these little warning cards and I forgot to do that.
That's wonderful to know, because
doing that, so
that's wonderful. Yeah, we asked a team member to do that because
Yeah.
we weren't sure and we wanted to know. So thanks.
I was asked to interject, so I'm sorry.
You're fine. Don't worry. Really quickly, just for the good of the order, Larry Birch, if you would just please state your address.
Yeah, Larry Birch, 677 South Lowell in Portland, 97239.
Excellent. And Kina Vols, is that the correct pronunciation of your last name?
Yep.
If we could just get your address and the company name as well.
Yeah, so it's 1380 Southeast 9th Avenue, Portland, Oregon, and it's Malem Architects.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate that. So with that, we will go ahead and move into our next section, which is for proponents of this project to speak. Again, you will get 5 minutes. There'll be 5 minutes per proponent. So is there anybody who would like to speak in as a proponent of this particular application? Going once, going twice. We will move on to opponents. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak in opposition of this application? Please unmute yourself or raise your hand. Opponents going once, twice. Okay, now we will move on to anybody who is in the neutral category. Anybody who is doesn't particularly have one way or the other whether this goes. Go ahead and unmute yourself or raise your hand. Going once, going twice. Excellent. So now we will go on to, we really don't have any rebuttal from the applicant because no one spoke. So I believe that we can shave that 10 minutes off, and we will go on to questions from the hearing body. So with that, I just want to double check. Commissioner Jarosh, was your question answered regarding the lighting? Excellent. And Commissioner Ewert, did you still have your question regarding those lot lines that were drawn on the map? No? Okay, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to dive into this. So here we go. I've got 3 issues. Number one, I find it really, really hard to believe with all of the building that we have approved in Canby over the last couple of years that high school is not going to get larger in enrollment. I just want to throw that out there. I know that you guys have all your data, and I even looked it up. It's been a flat line for the last couple of years, but with all of the sticks that are being nailed together in this town, I cannot believe there are not a couple of high school students in there somewhere. And so I think that you're doing yourselves a disservice by not putting in some parking in here somewhere, finding room for it somewhere. And so I remember how it was when I was in high school, different part of the state, but everybody was always clamoring for parking spots. So I think that love Canby High School, love everything you're doing, but I really think that you're painting yourselves in a corner as far as the parking is concerned. So those are my first two issues. The last issue is, and I don't know who I'm going to put this to, but on that emergency access, that lane that goes down next to your new building there, the new road that you're going to be putting in there, we've got 4 houses, possibly 5 that are along that road. And you said something that it kind of scared me just a little bit, and that you want to put motion sensors on those street lights going down that road. Now, I'm sorry, but I think that we're talking high school kids. It's going to be a lightning storm for those people in their backyards with those street lights going on and off if you put motion sensors on those lights. I think that's a really, really bad idea. So then I want to talk about those lights that are going down there. Is it necessary? And I know the code says that we have to have lights on poles and whatnot. I would be willing to entertain some kind of a motion to get those lights down on the ground, shielded, and the light directed towards the street that they're needing to light up. Give enough light there for security, but keep the light out of the people's backyards and out of their houses. They didn't sign up for that. And I think into this day and age, I think we can be a little bit more creative where that's concerned. So I would say be good neighbors with your project and keep that light towards the school and on the street where it needs to be. So the firemen have got enough light to do what they need to do. The police have got enough light, what they need to do, but that people don't have to install curtains on all their back windows like we had to do in our house here. So I'm speaking from experience. Try to get those lights down where they're functioning adequately, but not infringing on the neighbors. I know that during football games and whatnot, that's one thing to put up with the lights, but to have regular street lights on motion sensors, it'll be our own little lightning storm there next to the high school. So I would really like to see it be a little bit more creative than that. Other than that, build the room. I got 3 grandsons headed that way, so make it nice.
Okay. Do we let's run down through the list. I'm keeping kind of a list of what's going on because some other commissioners may have questions about the same thing, and then we'll circle back to get those covered if that makes sense to folks. So with that, Commissioner Calkins.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a question of the parking that is being removed and taken over by this building. Is that currently student parking right now? It's staff parking? Okay, where is that staff then going to park? If it's being used right now?
Okay. So your question is what type of parking that is?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, but we were kind of we were going to kind of
okay.
run.
I saw Shayna and Keena kind of shake their head. No, it's not student parking. So I guess my question for them is, if it's staff parking, like where is that staff going to park now? I have multiple questions about the parking for them.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, then what we might as well do, if we're going to have more of a discussion like that, we'll go ahead and give Commissioner Ewert respect of his question. And
Okay.
We'll circle back, and if folks could address his question regarding projections of the student population based on folks moving into Canby.
Yeah, Larry, do you feel in position to kind of speak to the enrollment study work? We start with that.
Thank you. For the enrollment, I think I'd like to turn it over to Vice Principal Weiniger, who has joined the call, who can speak to enrollment and probably some of the parking as well, or Kina can chime in on that. We do have several parking spots that are in the back of the school by the greenhouse and behind the art center that you guys never see really unless you drive back there, that are vacant most of the day. But Ben, would you take on the enrollment, please?
Yeah, enrollment in general, if you guys remember, we've been up to almost 1,700 in around the 2010 area. So we're down from our peak, 300 to 400 students. They did an enrollment survey, I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago, to try to figure out where the district was going and expecting we were going to see a big burst when the apartments went in over by Fred Meyer's, and we didn't see it. It was amazing. And the same thing with nearby residencies that have happened, that very few parents have moved in with little kids. Now, I think your thought would be they're going to have kids and it's going to increase again. But the study just showed that the turnover, now, there was a lot of turnover for kids. I don't know about any new developments or anything like that. That probably wasn't part of the enrollment. And when I say new developments, that's as of the past 2 or 3 years. But the previous ones, I believe, were involved there.
Could I add, this is Frank Angelo, part of the applicant team on the student enrollment. The enrollment figures that reflect the long-range facility plan. They come out of the long-range facility plan that the Canby School District did district-wide. And the firm that prepared the projections looked at births, deaths, in-migration, out-migration. They examined the amount of vacant residential land, made some good assumptions regarding how much development would occur in the 10-year period. And that's the conclusion they came to, was that the enrollment would be very flat. That's not uncommon. Other school districts are really experiencing the same thing throughout the state. The long-range facility plan is a 10-year plan. It's required by the state, ORS 195, 110. So school districts have to have a long-range facility plan, and it has to be based upon the projections that the district prepares. Oftentimes, those are prepared by Portland State University Center of Population Research. In this case, this was a different company that did the forecasting.
Okay. Does that help answer your question, Commissioner Ewert?
Sure. I'm not sure I swallow that, but I heard it, and we get down the road here, we'll see. I don't know. I find that just a little bit hard to believe, but I'm hard to convince of these kind of things.
I think what is also happening is that Canby is not a particularly affordable place for young families to move to. I don't know a lot of young families that have $600,000 to $800,000 to drop on a single family home. Now, hopefully that changes in 5 more years. I would love to see younger folks moving into Canby, but I just don't see. I know behind my house, most of these houses are not owned by people who plan on having children anytime soon. So we'll just have to see what that population data does. I'm hoping that it changes.
Well, then we better add on to the senior center too. So,
well, that's probably going to be a different application. We'll hold off on that one. So that was that one. And let's circle back to Commissioner Ewert's question regarding the fire lane lighting. So let's go ahead and do that, please.
Brianna, could you give some context here on the fire lane lighting? I mean, what is the city standard minimum for lighting? I think that's the beginning of this conversation.
You're muted. Yep.
It's actually more of a fire consideration. So when that question came up specifically, I don't know if it needs to be brighter than city lighting codes. Don.
And so did fire give any reference to illumination standards at all, Brianna?
Not to us, but I'm wondering if they have worked with the applicant team at all, or if we can make that a condition of approval.
Okay. I mean, I'm thinking when Commissioner Ewert were speaking of bollard lighting, but I'm not even sure if we can go there and that provides sufficient lighting. I mean, there's a number of elements here. There's safety for the kids. There's also the neighboring properties. So it's kind of a balance. I've seen some campuses, they were more university style that had bollard lightings combined with low level lighting that were pretty attractive. But again, I think the other thing to consider here is you mentioned, Brown, it's 0.25 foot candle. Is that what the lighting is in this, which is pretty low?
Yeah. I would just hate to speak for fire, but I see Shana wants to add something, so that would be great.
Well, I just see that Casey has his hand raised, and I'm wondering if between Casey and Casey is part of the project and applicant team, between Casey and Keena, and we do have some slides at the back of the deck that show, it's kind of similar to what you showed, Brianna, of the site lighting plan, but also some images of what the proposed lights look like, to the extent that that's helpful to anyone we can see. But yeah, I don't know if Casey and then Keena want to say something in particular about lighting.
Yeah. So Casey Cunningham, you had your hand raised.
Yes, Casey Cunningham, Cornerstone Management Group, or the owner's representative for the school district. My address is 9885 Southwest Choctaw Street in Tualatin, Oregon, 97062. So, we have, as school builders, we work a lot with school districts to work on these solutions, and also with our architect partners to create, like Commissioner said, the shields, and also lower those lighting. So, I mean, we are definitely open to that being a condition. We want to be good partners to those neighbors over there. We're very, considerate to that, them being close to that, and want to make sure that we're providing, the necessary shade trees and the lighting that will make them comfortable. We have no intention of, like you said, creating a lightning storm. I think what we're intending for those motion sensors is really specific to kind of maybe in those doorways, and it can be more of a downlight that would give us just kind of some camera access if we had someone trying to break in, or specific to those instances, more than it is like the entire wall pack sconces coming on as those go on. It would be specific to lighting that would just give us security vision with our cameras more than it is anything to be able to provide, lighting for our fire trucks. That would be something that would be a different application.
I think also that you probably need to talk to the police about that too, because what we're creating here is kind of an alleyway that's going back behind the school there. It's something they have to patrol and see get their consensus of what kind of lighting they would like to see back there. Because I know in the past, we've always had the police really, really hesitate when we create a street or an alleyway or whatever that goes back, that they have to enter and there's not enough light there for them to actually see what they're doing. And so I would talk to the fire, but I would also talk to the police about that. And, if we just keep it down low to where, we're just not bothering neighbors, I think, we're smart enough nowadays to be able to figure this out and make it all great for everybody.
And this is an existing drive, right? I mean, this drive is not creating a new drive, but yeah, Keena, if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah. I should have mentioned that house shields as part of the fixture are what we would incorporate into the light fixtures themselves. So that's already part of the project. And the lights, each light in and of themselves, are only down lights, right? So it's part of this sort of dark sky idea, so that we're just creating light in the areas where people are going to be walking or where emergency vehicles will need to be accessing the site. So that's just part of the fixture, the way that they're built and designed. And I think Brianna mentioned at the beginning that this margin of spillover that would occur on the east is about a half a watt. So it's a pretty low level amount. And again, with the shielding, the idea is it's sort of creating, sort of directional light, if you will, in the areas that need to be illuminated. I think that with the motion detector aspect, I mean, we're certainly open to those lights could just be on a photo cell, meaning that when the sunset, those lights would start to come on slowly and then just be at a set illumination rate during, the nighttime. It's kind of a question of, is that a better approach, or is it better at night where they can turn off, and then if something trips them, like an emergency vehicle or a police cruiser, that then they would come on. So I think that's and either approach would be easy enough to sort of modify in the design, depending on the desire from the Planning Commission.
In my opinion, I would say keep them low. Try to stay away from LEDs, and I definitely would look at more of a dusk to dawn type of a light than a motion sensor thing. I think the police would appreciate that too.
Okay, and I think we just want to make sure that we are tying this to whatever. Sounds like maybe there's some questions regarding what the code would specifically require for a fire lane. And it sounds like, do we need to put in a provision that we just need to circle back and double check those, like specifically regarding lighting requirements for fire lanes, or how would you like to move forward with that?
Well, we can add a condition of approval that ensures the applicant continues to work with Canby Fire, because those are really the thresholds we're worried about. The thing about the heights, I also wonder about their trucks and apparatus and things like that. So if we try to lower them, will they get in the way physically? But to your question, we can add a condition of approval that they work with the fire department, and we can also require an additional type 1 detailed lighting plan from them. And we would review that at the staff level to make sure, we would be looking at that 0.2 foot candle, of course, but we would also be asking for the details, the shielding, the fixtures, things like that.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't want to get on assumptions of what these lights could or cannot do, heights and stuff. I think that will open up a can of worms. But I think if we put in a conditional use that there's a look at regarding Canby Fire and Canby PD, to weigh in on this with the detailed lighting plan, that should take care of that. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, I see thumbs up. Fantastic. So moving on to Commissioner Calkins.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, I'm good with that, figuring out that piece on the lighting. Sounds good to me. So back to what I was asking about. So that staff parking, they're going to be moved to behind the FAC. Where would they be parking then?
I can speak a little bit of staff parking right now.
Thanks.
The east parking lot is the area which, remember, that was the old tennis courts back, like 15 years ago. That's kind of been used by typical custodial staff and teachers that teach in the 200 hall, if you will, over there. Mm-hmm. There are still some spots that typically on a daily basis are vacant right in front of, behind the Canby Center, sort of on where the 200 hall is, just north of that. And there's also spots in the 4th Street Center. that are, not the visitor spots that are on the driveway on the way in, but more close to the 4th Street Center. Obviously, that's going to be a little bit more of a walk to the people to the back building, but at the same time, for that real estate, that's what makes sense.
Okay, so I've dropped the kids off there, and that parking's that spot. There's usually a bunch of spots in that, so okay, that makes sense. So is that 255 number? Is that what's going to be available? What's going to be the available, I guess, spaces when this is all done, if it were to be improved?
225 total spaces are proposed.
Right. 225.
Yeah.
And how many? So if you're a student, you need to get a parking pass, right? And how many do you currently have, say, for the 2022 school year?
Ben, are you able to rattle that off, or
Is it less than that?
I don't recall. Let me look it up in a moment in my email, and I can tell you. But I can tell you that in general, we have not. I know other schools have limited parking passes for students.
Right.
We have not done that. That hasn't been a historical piece that we've done. Even in our heyday of 1,700 students, we haven't limited parking passes for students. Let me take a look and see if I can get that for you.
I believe I saw in your narrative that there was a call out regarding the number of student parking passes not meeting the total number that has ever, like the number of student parking passes that are available have never been required, have never been used. Am I correct? And I didn't just dream that, correct? That was in the.
It said that. I was just curious how many were being used right now compared to the 225 that would be, left.
Okay.
But I mean, if you don't have it, Ben, that's okay. I'm not the flat enrollment. Some would say declining enrollment. If you look at the raw numbers, isn't super surprising to me. I know Scott Archer, our city administrator, did a presentation to the city that I attended that talked about the census numbers that just came out, and the people moving to Canby are my age and older, and they don't have kids. Their kids have moved away, or they didn't have kids. So everyone kind of moving into these new homes that are building, it's like we're seeing less students in there, and it looks to be the trend all over the country is people aren't having kids like they used to for a lot of socioeconomic reasons. So that isn't really a concern to me. I was just more kind of curious on that piece and where the staff then would park. But I think that covers my questions.
Okay. And I guess along those lines, if there was a demand for more parking, is there a contingency plan for when that happens? Like, do you have the ability to squeeze more parking in somewhere under a different, like in 5 years, if all of a sudden there's this huge boost, do you have the ability to do that?
Well, I'll just chime in with one thing that we were just touching on with the student parking passes. It seems like there are some kind of management techniques that the school could start to use that it hasn't had to use yet. But that's just one thought.
Okay.
Is there anyone else from the team want to add anything?
A lot of them will limit them to juniors and seniors. That's a pretty common trend. I did forget to mention that my address is 1733 Southeast 12th, and I'm one of those young families with kids coming up on through.
Okay, I can check you off the list here. You're off my list for the end. Okay, excellent. Commissioner Calkins, did you have anything else to add?
Oh yeah, I did think of one more thing. So because of the flat enrollment, so that this extension of facilities and classrooms, is it to the purpose of it? Big picture is that to reduce class size? What's the purpose of doing this if expanding the building if we're not seeing like an increase, I guess, in student enrollment?
Okay, I see Casey Cunningham, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, the original plan was to actually demo the 200 wing and put the new classroom spaces there. But during planning and walking around the building, we realized that there was kind of the existing 2 outbuildings that were out there were underutilized and were in very poor condition. So what we're doing is building those spaces and actually recreating the storage spaces in the 200 wing and allowing us kind of some flexibility where if we did have enrollment issues, we could repurpose those to classrooms if we needed. But it's not, the intention is obviously a modernization, and that's kind of what we laid out in kind of our other pieces that we're doing in the school, is really trying to modernize the school. And that's what this new space is: modern science classrooms, modern general ed classrooms. We're tying in, a couple of the other programs with kind of some flexible learning spaces, a new commons that really, kind of modernizes it more than it does expand it.
Okay. That's helpful. I didn't see this mentioned in the presentation, and I may have missed it, but is the new space taking into the account like kind of the requirements that we may be seeing in the next couple of months as far as ventilation and student with I've actually been substitute teaching, not in Canby, in another school district, and I know that some of the requirements for the students being next to each other, I had kids 6 inches apart, 6 feet apart, 3 feet apart. They were like 3 inches apart, in some of the classes I was teaching in. And so I was just kind of curious on that piece as far as when you mentioned modernization and what that might look like for this new wing.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we're doing, we're touching every single HVAC unit in that school. We're trying to increase outside air, which is a big thing for us. We're putting operable windows in all of our new classroom spaces, and really in an advanced control system that allows us to maximize those systems. And that's really our goal, is to be able to control and have the access to outside air and fresh air ventilation.
Casey, I'd like to add as well as the spaces are much bigger than we're used to, and flexible for science programs, and we will not have those crowded spaces to not get the number of students that we need in there.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. I'm good. Thanks.
Excellent. Commissioner Jarosh.
Hi, thank you. First of all, I just want to thank the staff for something that is probably not widely known, but I did notice in the staff report, and that is from a heritage and historic perspective, if there is any publicly owned resource that is more than 50 years old that is to be touched, the State Historic Preservation Office must be consulted, and I saw that happened. And thank you so much for doing that. So check, double check, gold star. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then I do want to touch on parking. I think there are just so many unknowns. I mean, we could say, as the town becomes more affluent, then more kids will have cars. I mean, we could go anywhere with these numbers. But I do want to touch on parking. Just, I think as Commissioner Ewert mentioned, it's sort of a good neighbor process. And so when you think about not the day-to-day school, but the events that occur, and of course, the neighbors know they live near a school. They've lived there for many years. But when there's something new that affects them from the school, when there are events, they're the first folks that show up at the council meetings, and loud and proud, let me tell you. So it could be a little bit of a PR thing to consider. We're basically taking away 30 street parking. We're adding 30 cars to street parking when there's any large event. And it's just something to consider from a neighbor perspective. So that's just something I would ask us to think about. Other than that, I guess it's just consideration for being a good neighbor and for public relations perspective. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Hutchinson.
Do we have an additional discussion section, or I can speak to a few of these issues just as someone who's spent a lot of time on that campus, but I'm not sure this is the appropriate time.
This is, no, we are in discussion regarding the application. And then from here, we go into, decision, correct? Public test. Oh, no, wait, no, rebuttal. Oh, did I not close the public testimony? Shoot, we'll have to circle back and do that. No, technically we're in, the question section, and then we will have a separate discussion and deliberation.
Okay, I have some things to say during discussion. I do not have questions for the client.
Okay. And I guess I should just point out, so I tried to run my meetings so I'm not squashing any discussion, but really, when it comes to, like some of the things as far as, this is my perception of this and some of that's really in the discussion section. This portion is really specifically for asking the candidates or the applicant something, those questions that pertain to whether there is some sort of code issue or something along those lines. Is that correct, planning staff? Okay, I don't want to quash this discussion because I think it's great, but I just don't want to. I just want to make sure that we're handling the different things in those particular sections. So with that, was there any other? I do not have any other I do not have any questions of the applicant at this point in time. So with that, was there any other questions from anybody to the applicant? Okay, so with that, I'm going to kind of back up and I'm going to close the public testimony. We have done the questions, and now we will go on to discussion and deliberation of this particular motion. So, Commissioner Hutchinson, you have the floor.
All right. Speaking to enrollment. The enrollment has been in this neighborhood. I stopped working for the Canby School District about 4 years ago. The enrollment level has been in that neighborhood for the 2 decades prior. It's something that we all watched fairly closely because it had a big effect on our budget numbers and what kind of extracurricular things that we could pull together. Because, each student represents a dollar amount for the school district. So, they kept saying that they kept expecting people to move to Canby and the enrollment to continue. But the thing is people move here, raise their kids, and then they don't move away. And then someone else has to move in with kids. And there's really not starter homes in this neighborhood. And so, yeah, it's like, while we have been growing, yes, but enrollment at the district has been pretty consistently what it is for a long time. And there's never really been any discussion of adding to the campus. Parking, that spot, as Ben said, is for some very specific maintenance staff and for the people who work at that very extreme end of the building, back behind the Fine Arts Center, since they added that auxiliary parking lot back behind there, I believe at the same time when they added the new greenhouse. That place is mostly vacant. I mean, there's usually less than a dozen cars up there and there's capacity for probably 50 or more. And so that kind of reflects what's going on. I mean, there's going to be further to walk, but then, as far as the usage is concerned, the only time when the Canby School District has been short of parking in that area is graduation night. Every other event I've ever been to, you've been able to find parking somewhere if you're just willing to walk for it. Lighting. That area that is the fire lane is currently a space where, it's driveway into the parking there, but there's 2 gates at the end of it. One of it kind of heads into the core that is going to be covered by the new building, and it was actually a service entrance. There's access to the boilers back there, and there's some other kind of infrastructure items that go on through that gate, and then there's a gate that heads out onto the track and field, and that's actually an entrance gate for during the football games. Currently, there are a couple of big, ugly, high-intensity discharge lights bolted to the side of the existing school structure, and that just kind of spews across that parking lot. And I'm not 100% sure. I would have to check, but I'm pretty sure that the neighbors have put up arborvitae all along their fence line just because of that. Modern lighting doesn't spew in all directions at once like the lighting does that was bolted to the side of the building. It's much more targeted. To the point where I've had problems with solar-powered thermostats not being powered because everyone's being so miserly with their photons. So I would tend to think not just of the lighting that's going in, but also what's being removed to make the space for it. And one other thing, I had to pull power out of the buildings that are being demolished once a year for graduation, and good riddance to them. They're sheet metal, they're uninsulated, the masonry inside is crumbling. There's some places where the custodial staff would would wash their push broom mops, and it is a completely uninsulated space that is pretty much heated all year long just to keep the plumbing from freezing. And the energy savings from that spot alone, I think, will make it worth it paying for this project. So I think that's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay. Moving down through the list. Commissioner Ewert, did you have anything for discussion? No? Okay. Commissioner Jarosh. Commissioner Calkins. No? Excellent. I just will say, please, I am usually a stickler of parking, as many people on here will mention. I usually hammer when people want variances for parking. I understand what's going on. I would just stress that you maybe include in your long-range plan, if it's not already, where other parking may be able to be fit in on school property should miraculously we have a bloom in population of young, like, if I'm sure as those students enter into the middle school, the grade school and the middle school, you will see that wave coming and have the ability to address that. And I feel bad for the custodians. I was a custodian in high school. That was one of my high school jobs. And I can tell you right now, I would have hated to do anything out in Western New York's weather in a fairly unheated shed. That would have really been horrible. So it sounds like it's a good idea that those buildings are being torn down and renovated. So that's all I had. Commissioner Ewert, you have your hand back up.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing on the parking, and this would happen to be for anybody out there that is listening to our discussion on this. I just want to go on record saying that I am the only reason that I am agreeing to the parking situation is because it's a high school, and I'll buy into what you're saying. But I also believe that if worse comes to worse and you have to have more parking, you've got area there that you can asphalt and put in more parking. So if we've got some contractor out there or some building person or architect person that's going to come back down the road and say, hey, you let the high school get away with lowering their parking, that's not going to play. So I just want to put that out there. The only reason we're doing it is because it's high school and it's our kids. And I think they'll do the right thing if they need to put more parking and it becomes an issue with the neighborhoods and so on and so forth.
I completely agree. Thank you very much for mentioning that. So with that, is there any other discussion? Okay, so let me find my little paper here. So with that, I'd like to entertain a motion based on the findings and conclusions contained in the February 14th, 2022 staff report on testimony and public hearing and on commission deliberations. I entertain a motion to approve Canby High School improvement and new wing DR 21-13 CUP 21-01 with the amendment or with the condition of revisiting with Canby Fire and Canby PD to deliberate regarding the lights in the fire lane.
Chair Padden, we actually have written up a more specific condition for that. Brianna, would you go ahead, please?
Yes. Let me pull it back.
Do you need to close that hearing that you were talking about earlier, Commissioner?
I did close the public hearing.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Sorry, it's such a tiny window. Okay. The applicant shall coordinate with Canby Fire Department and Canby Police Department to determine, sorry, so small, to determine the minimum acceptable lighting standards for safety, and access for emergency services. And then a second one, a type 1 site plan application providing lighting specifications pursuant to CFD and CPD coordination is required before site plan approval.
Okay. So that is the motion. Is there anybody who entertains the motion?
Yes, I'll entertain the motion as read.
Okay. It's approved. It's moved by Commissioner Ewert, seconded by
I second.
Commissioner Calkins. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those, any opposition? I am as well. Any opposition? No opposition. With that, the motion carries. And congratulations on the approval there. Go ahead and go forth and build happy. Oh, wait, hold on a second. We just want to make sure, Frank Angelo,
Yes.
please list your address just for the record.
Yeah, 921 Southwest Washington, Suite 468, Portland, 97205.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I promise you, as we go through this, I will make sure that we do this a lot cleaner. So with that, we have no other, let me get back to the agenda. We have no other hearings, so we will move on into items of interest from the planning staff.
Chair Patton, I just have a few items to share briefly. And in regard to the initial discussion on flex items and upcoming hearings, I wanted to bring up a few items that would be coming before the Planning Commission. One of those we'll put on for February 28th will be a Parks Master Plan update. We'll put that on as an additional item if we have time to get to that. Ryan Potter will be running in my position on that hearing. I'll actually be out of town. And he's managing that master planning process. We do have 2 hearings that we're expecting for February 28th. One is the continuation for Mark's Place, and then there's an apartment project as well that's also anticipated for that hearing. On March 14th, and I'm going to cover a few things on March 14th and March 28th. We have a very small lull and hearing items, and then it picks right back up again. So March 14th, I intend to bring the model ordinance, which is House Bill 2001, as a work session before the Planning Commission. It's more educational, as the state basically has it's a mandate essentially, and we can't really make it any less restrictive than they've already adopted. But just to understand what that means for the city and codification of that process, and so it'll go before the Planning Commission in a hearing after. We'll do the work session on March 14th, and then the hearing for that will be likely on April 11th or 25th, along with other code items that will be included with that, including a permit fee update as part of that. And then on March 28th, food carts, the ordinance, we did the work session. Mariana did that last time. The ordinance or the code itself will be before the Planning Commission on March 28th. And then at that point on April 11th, we're starting to get right back into it. We don't have complete forecasting of applications as to all where they're going to land, but there's a ton of them happening, all that will take us through this part of the summer that we are seeing as part of our submittal. We just don't know exactly where they fall, but we're tracking those. So just wanted to mention that. I also wanted to ask if the planning commissioners had all set up, and Judy, with the exception of Commissioner Jarosh, do you have access to city email?
Yeah, I do. Mine's working well.
Okay, good. Okay. So I will continue to provide as needed the emails until everybody's fully set up there, but that's great. So just wanted to ask about that. And there was several of the planning commissioners did a training recently, and I'll be looking for other opportunities as well. If that was beneficial as a training, if you guys are interested in that, we'll be looking for other opportunities as well for you. And that was about all I really had on updates.
Okay, so with the city email, I just want to make sure you are able to access the city email from a different computer, not the iPad. So that is an option if you are interested. You can just log in from really any browser using a link.
And what it can do on that Chair Patton is maybe send out something, and that would be helpful, I think, for Commissioner Jarosh on that.
Okay. Yeah, because the iPad I don't use a whole lot because it's just tiny. So I just log in. Now that I have access to it, I just log into it through the web link on my computer.
Okay.
Okay, so is there Commissioner Calkins, do you have anything regarding the staff updates?
Yeah, I was going to ask if we had pardon my dog, an update on the food cart pods. I drove through Sandy and saw their food cart pod, and it was called Sandy Topia or Sandy Vania. I don't know, it had a cute name. And there was a bunch of food cart pods there right off the main. It was like right on the main, where it splits into two and then it like rejoins later. Anyway, it made me remember we talked that awesome talk about the food cart. So I was wondering if there was an update on that.
Yeah, I think Don just had mentioned that will come back across our desk on March 28th.
Yeah, and that's correct. So we'll have more.
That was okay. Got it.
And just ironically, just coincidentally, we had two gentlemen come in and I spoke with them, and they're super interested in, and they showed me their food cart, and they were talking about other jurisdictions. And there definitely is interest, and I think there is interest in a very positive way. And so they just randomly showed up. We had a ton of people come in one week, which is a little unusual, and just walk in the door. So there definitely is interest.
So is that like, will that be the final reading based on our feedback from last time? Then it goes to city council? Is that how that works?
Yeah, it'll go to city council for their blessing and their approval for that. And then it needs to go through that whole review process where they adopt it, and then there's a second reading, and then 30 days after it becomes effective. So we still have some time before it's actually, by the council adopted, but we're trying to get it back into a form addressing all the concerns that were noted. And hopefully that will be making the lives easy for council members as they go through this.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. So with that, we'll move on into the final piece of our agenda, which is items of interest and guidance from the Planning Commission. Do any planning commissioners have items of interest or directives for the planning staff?
I have a comment.
Okay.
So moving forward, if we have any other meetings that fall on holidays, i.e. Valentine's Day, for the sake of marriages all across our city, maybe what we should do is, and whether it's Valentine's Day or Christmas or whatever it is, move it one day, one side or the other, let the applicants know that, hey, our next meeting is going to be on the 14th. Could we do this on the 15th, or we will do this on the 15th? If we could do that, that'd be great. Say I spend enough time in the doghouse and I don't need to add to it anymore. So that's number one. Number two, Chair Patton, you're doing a great job. So just hang in there. Trust me, it'll all come. You won't even have to read it in a few more months. So you'll wake up at night and you'll be going through everything just the way you're supposed to do it. But you're doing fine. You're doing fine. That's all I got.
Excellent. With just to circle back on Commissioner Ewert's first point, what sort of lead time would we have to do if we were to make a change like that? I'm assuming it would need to be about a month or so in advance, correct?
Yeah, we would have to advertise that too. I need to check to see what our code actually dig into that. But if there isn't any restriction, we would clearly have to advertise for that date specific and call that out as a special date. That may be all that's needed. And generally, when it's the major holidays, and I get Valentine's Day, I mean, it's one of those important days, even though it may not be as heavy as like Christmas and Easter, like the other holidays of the year, but I get it. I mean, so I think we'd have to just be in advance and look at our calendar, say, and be forecasting that. I think it might be as simple as just saying it's a hearing date, and we point out that it's a special date, and we do the advertisement for that.
Okay. Yeah, I just like to make it to 48, 49, and 50, and too much of this is not going to get me there. So you guys need to help me out wherever you can.
Well, I got to tell you, I do not particularly care about Valentine's Day for obvious reasons. I have no need to celebrate it other than I would eat chocolate. But I did go into Hulbert Flowers today to look for a Swiss cheese vine. And I'm like, why are there so many cars here? And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. Oh my gosh, it's all these folks that need to get flowers. And it was just a stream of people like, oh my gosh, grabbing things from the cooler. It was a heck of a thing.
I rest my case on the whole parking issue right there. That says it.
Yes, I did have to, and hopefully I don't get a ticket for this. I did have to park in the railroad easement to go in. So we're
going to read about that. Going to hear about it on the news.
I'm sure it'll be in
If Canby Current's listening right now, it's going to be on Canby Now tomorrow.
There you go. Okay, so with that, Commissioner Jarosh. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Thank you for naming the links on the website for tonight's meeting. That was great. Yeah, I don't know who made that happen. Last time was a challenge, so thank you for doing that. Keep it up.
Okay, excellent. So with that, in closing, I will just say, I two quick things. One, I do bear with me for our next meeting. I will make it work, but I will be in New York at the time, so the time difference will be a little weird. I've already warned my parents that they may get a late night sleep because I have a planning commission meeting. Also, they live in the middle of the woods, and so I might actually have to go into town to even get internet service. So we're gonna see, but I've made my traveling meetings work so far. This one is gonna work as well. So just bear with me with that one. And I did want to just real quick thank you very much, Commissioner Ewert, for your encouraging words. I will say that during the last planning commission meeting, I did get a little frustrated and towards the end of the meeting due to some personal things going on. And so I wanted to apologize if any of that was offensive to anybody, you folks, or the community. It was not my intention, and I will work to kind of tone that down. So I appreciate you all bearing with me as we continue down this journey together. So with that, if we have nothing else, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
So moved by Commissioner Jarosh, seconded by Commissioner Ewert. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. No abstentions. The motion carries. Thank you very much for your time this evening, Canby and applicants, and we will see you at our next regularly scheduled meeting. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Night.